Pharmacist Ben,
AJ, what's up, buddy?
how are you, man?
Good to see you. Good to see your handsome face on a Friday
Oh,
morning.
oh man, you're too kind. You're too kind.
How come you never grow beard? How come you never have any facial hair? Can you grow facial hair, actually?
I typically have a goatee, but
Yeah, I don't
you
suppose.
know it ages me, so
Oh, I know. That's why I shave too. It ages me.
so I try and
Oh,
keep that
no.
to a minimum.
I know, because you do look. Remember, I thought you were like in your 20s or 30s.
Oh, stop it!
I
See
did.
now,
Remember when you told me you were like an old man? I was like, what? Holy cows.
you're so gracious.
Yeah,
All
no,
right,
that's the truth.
well,
I'm not gracious. That's the truth. If you were an old fart looking guy, I would say that too. So anyway, my friend.
Well, everybody, welcome to Pharmacist Ben's Bites on a Pharmacist Fridays. We typically would be 2 hours or so, 3 hours from now, and we typically would be doing this on Daily with Doc. But Pharmacist Ben was gracious enough to give us some time for Pharmacist Ben's Bites, given that we were all needing to prepare for tomorrow's
You should
big
give a little
seminar.
plug for tomorrow. Give a little plug.
Yeah, tomorrow's big seminar is going to be live, and you can get the link at ajhealthcoach.com, and that will give you the link for tomorrow's big seminar. And we hope to have a ton of folks. I typically will put something pretty witty on YouTube to ask folks to hit the like button, but I'm unable to do that because we are together doing this now. So that's the housekeeping. That's the housekeeping. And Pharmacist Ben, I just wanted to start with one of the things here that will be filed in the Pharmacist Ben was right category.
Yeah, which one's that?
And this would be there was an article that talks about gut health
Uh-huh.
being important for brain health.
Dude,
And it's like,
I'm
what
telling
do
you,
you?
I don't know how much proof you have to see because it's just logical. Really, the whole idea of the interface between the intestine and the blood is just a logical leap from that point to disease. The blood is where disease is. We don't, sometimes we misunderstand the nature of the blood. And I sometimes wonder what people think about the blood. The blood is a highway to everything. And the blood is a complex system that the pH has to be just so. The amount of solid material in the blood, just so. The temperature, just so. The oxygenation, just so. Everything is precisely structured. And while it's true that there are homeostatic mechanisms that pull the ups down and the downs up and adjust everything accordingly, the fact of the matter is the blood has to be kept pristine and tightly architected, tightly regulated. So once schmutz, dirt, garbage, literally gets into the blood, pus, if you will, gets into the blood, you can't help but have a disaster on your hands. Now, yes, some of that stuff can be manipulated, but for the most part, all that toxicity, as we've said many times, gets dumped out into the tissues. So all disease is cell disease. All cell disease is related to dirty blood. The blood becomes dirty only from two places. Injection, which we always talk about. Be very careful about injecting. Be very skeptical about any healthcare professional who says, oh, you have a virus, you might have to inject this thing. Be very careful. But for the most part, it's the intestine. The link between the intestine and the blood. That's key to everything. And why is this so important? A, it simplifies everything. If you just take care of that juncture, that intestinal blood connection, if you will, that nexus between the intestine and the blood, everything will start to resolve. Now, there's other things you got to do, of course, but you'll start to notice results right there because that stream of toxicity will be cut off once you start working on digestion and food and the intestine. But secondly, and this is the part that gets missed sometimes, nutrients are absorbed through the intestine. So once your intestine is inflamed, not only are you going to be dealing with toxicity getting into the blood, but you're going to be malnourished as well. Remember, Rock'em Sock'em Robots. Boom, boom. You get leaky gut, nutritional deficiencies. It's a 1-2 punch. So for those reasons, working on digestive health is the key to everything. And this is why you see periodically articles come out. Oh, doctors now believe that the intestine is related to the brain, blah, blah, blah. Well, it's just logic. Don't wait for doctors to decide that it makes sense. It's just common sense. Now, here's the thing. The brain utilizes or is the source of more blood flow than any other system in the body. It's using up a large percentage of the blood, or the stuff that's, I should say, the nutrients in the blood. And so the brain is very dependent. Everything's dependent, but the brain especially and the heart are very, very dependent on blood flow. Once the blood flow becomes either contaminated or coagulated or sticky, of course the brain's going to be involved. Of course you're going to have some brain issues, all brain issues, not just dementia, but Parkinson's disease, movement disorders, memory problems, emotional problems. All of these can be related to dirty blood. It's just kind of common sense when you think about how the body is constructed. There's also an issue called leaky brain disease. I heard one of these, talking heads on I forgot what it was. It was a news show, some talking heads news show, your MSNBC or CNN, one of the standard ones. And she was making fun of RFK Jr. because RFK Jr. was talking about leaky brain. And this lady, who shall remain nameless, she's like, and now they like to make fun of RFK. So now he's talking about this thing called leaky brain, ha, 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 as if it's this funny thing. It's not a funny thing. It's a real thing. You have blood flow that goes to the brain that is where the circulatory system is blocked. It's protected because you don't want stuff leaking out of the blood into the brain. You want the blood flowing through the brain, and the stuff that gets into the brain has to be very controlled, obviously. You don't want just stuff going into the brain. There are all kinds of toxins in the blood. You don't want that getting into the brain. However, one of the things toxicity in the blood does is it inflames the circulatory system, so stuff leaks out of the blood vessels. So now we have this thing called leaky brain disease, where the blood vessels leak in the brain. Ordinarily, there's a barrier between the blood and the brain. They actually call it the blood-brain barrier. Have you heard that term? The blood-brain barrier. And that's a barrier that prevents stuff from getting out of the blood into the brain, because you don't want stuff getting out of the blood in the brain unless it's tightly regulated. When you have leaky brain or leaky brain disease, I guess you could call it, stuff leaks out. It's a real thing. And that's where brain health issues can begin to accrue. Also, there's a relationship between the stuff bacteria are making in the intestine and the brain. There's one molecule in particular that makes you feel happy. That's made by bacteria. It not only makes you feel happy, it makes you feel satisfied. And so the way the system is structured, when these bacteria make this material, it's called butyrate, by the way. It's a fat. It goes into the brain, and the brain says, stop eating. You're happy now. You're satisfied. And the bacteria are communicating this message to the brain based on what they're getting, what kind of food they're getting. So when you eat certain foods, the bacteria in the intestine respond to those foods by secreting this molecule, butyrate, into the blood, goes into your brain, and you feel happy. In fact, butyrate is so important for feeling happy. You can buy it in the health food store, or you can buy it in your longevity sleepies, the new melatonin gummies. It's called GABA. You heard of GABA, right? GABA. GABA is gamma amino butyrate, or butyric acid, technically. So GABA is a derivative, it's made in the brain, of this gas, or this fat, I should say, not a gas, but a fat that's secreted from bacteria. So number one, you've got toxicity that gets into the brain through a leaky brain or leaky blood. The blood-brain barrier becomes leaky. That's the toxicity part. Number two, you got butyrate coming in to the brain through bacteria, the microbiome. And number three, the same neurotransmitters that are in the brain are in the gut. In fact, the intestine is said to be your second brain. Guess what your third brain is, by the way? Your skin.
Wow.
Your third brain, right? Guess what your fourth brain is? Your immune system.
Wow.
So you have to have multiple brains. That is information processors. So in any case, the digestive system, specifically the intestine, is said to be your second brain because it responds to serotonin. It responds to dopamine. It responds to noradrenaline. It responds to brain chemicals. And brain chemicals from the brain talk to the intestine, and chemicals from the intestine talk to the brain. So there's a major, major relationship between the brain and the digestive system, specifically the intestine, via toxicity, via bacteria and bacterial secretions, and via neurotransmitters. And this is why people will all understand that you can sense things in your gut. You can have almost like an intelligence in your gut. You can feel it in your gut. It's actually functioning like a brain, like a neurological system. So for all of these reasons, there's an intimate relationship between brain health and intestinal health. And so, this should be no surprise if you know about the triangle of disease, because it's the first point on the triangle of disease. So I sent you that article because, I hate to say I told you so, but I told you so, And one of the most egregious examples or dramatic examples of this phenomenon is Parkinson's disease. I talk to people with Parkinson's disease every week, literally every week. I got to call a guy back today. I'll tell you about this guy. Fascinating guy. I think I may have told you about this. He lives in Alabama, and he's not a nutrition guy. He's just a regular guy, blue collar guy, and he has this terrible Parkinson's disease. And I can help. And Doc says the same thing, by the way. We can help anybody with Parkinson's disease. So I told him exactly what I tell everybody when we're talking about here today: work on the foods and work on the intestine. No surprise to me, but shock to him. 2 weeks later, he's a new man. Now we stay in touch every week. He wasn't completely resolved. We had to tweak it a little bit. But now this is going on 6 months, and he has a slight limp a little bit, but his Parkinson's disease is basically done. He's been going to doctors, multiple doctors, and taking multiple drugs, and nothing helped. It's not because of me. He thinks it's me. It's not me. It's the way the system is constructed. Now, if you go online, guess what the latest treatment for Parkinson's disease is? Medical treatment. Fecal transplants.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Yeah. Right now, I'm not a big, it sounds disgusting. Probably is disgusting, never had one. But the point is they're readjusting the microbiome to help people deal with Parkinson's. It's now medical protocol. You don't need to wait for it to be medical protocol. Just use common sense. And if Parkinson's is especially horrific. I don't know if you've ever seen somebody with Parkinson's. It can be awful. Can you imagine? Like you can't hold it. You can't open. You're shaking all the time. It's a horrible, horrible, horrible thing. No answers from the medical model. Get yourself on the I-26 and your ultimate enzymes and your digestive support, and do your food diary and elimination diet, blah, 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 all the things we talk about. First point on the triangle of disease, you'll be a new man or woman, depending on your gender. You'll be a new person once you start working on digestive health. So that's my 2 cents. That's why I sent you that article.
Well, thank you for that. But I also have a couple questions that came up. Just one quick statement, then a question. That's kind of why I guess we've had the old adage, you are what you eat.
Yes.
Because
you are what you eat.
They've always understood how important what we put in our body is going to affect our body.
Hippocrates, the father of medicine, talked about it. He said all disease begins in the gut. He said, let food be thy medicine, let medicine be thy food. I like Steve Jobs' version better. He said, let food be your medicine, or medicine will be your food. That's a little bit more dramatic, and I think that has a little bit more impact. But that's, isn't that interesting how that handsome face of yours, AJ, that's yesterday's lunch, right? Our bodies are constructed over what we ate for lunch yesterday or the day before. The food we eat gets turned into our bodies structurally, literally, not to mention metabolically and biochemically, all of the things that happen to our biochemistry based on the foods we eat. The first 2 points on the triangle of disease are just that: digestive system and the blood sugar system. And while I call it the triangle, you really just focus on the base, because that's where the outside world meets the inside world. And indeed, that's why food is so important. It's the outside world getting into the inside world. The body's a closed system. In this closed system, everything stays the same. There's a physics law, the law of conservation of energy within a closed system. That means everything stays the same in a closed system. But of course, the body really isn't a closed system. It has that opening, which is the food. And that's why the food is so, so darn important. Not to mention the fact that the body's main job is to turn food into energy. That's its main job, to turn food into energy. And when you think about our health problems all involve energy. It's all about energy. Metabolic syndrome is an energy issue. The whole digestive component is about energy. We have created a world in the year 2024 where we are trying to get energy like a man trying to get water by drinking out of a fire hose. We have so much energy coming into the system. We're flooding the system with energy in a body that just needs to have the energy trickling in. And then once it's trickled in, channeled very, very nanoscopically at the tiniest levels, the quantum levels. And what we're doing is we're flooding the body with energy. We're burning our circuits. That's what this whole mitochondrial thing is about. You know how you hear about mitochondrial medicine and mitochondrial nutrition? There's this thing called NAD that everybody's talking about. This all involves the mitochondria because it's at the level of the mitochondria where the food gets turned into energy. The whole body is designed to take hamburger and turn it into chemical energy. But at the level of the mitochondria, that hamburger has been transformed into quantum stuff, tiny molecules. And those tiny molecules are supposed to go into the mitochondria and then get magically transformed. And at the other end of the mitochondria, you have what's called ATP, which is the energy that drives the whole system. But what we're doing, because we get so much energy coming into the body, is we're burning out those mitochondria. We're flooding the cell, flooding the mitochondria with all kinds of energy. We can't handle it. And so the body ends up just shoving that energy, all that stored energy, into fat. And that disrupts the whole system. Now you've got a system, a fat system, that is blown up like Elephant Man. You ever seen Elephant Man? That's what our fat system is like. It's all distorted. And the fat system is making hormones, and blood has to go through the fat system. And it creates this complete metabolic imbalance in the body. And that's what disease is. So really, it's only the first 2 points that you got to focus on. The adrenal glands and the thyroid are very important, and relaxation is important, but just focusing on food and focusing on how the body turns that food into energy, i.e. sugar, really, that's it. That's everything. The medical model doesn't know that, or it doesn't want you to know that. I'm not sure which one. I would venture to say it's a combination of both, because a lot of physicians aren't researchers necessarily, and that's another issue. Our medical system and our health system is run by clinical chemists or clinical practitioners. If they're not chemists, they're clinical practitioners. What you want to understand is biochemistry, not clinical chemistry. Clinical chemistry is the chemistry of the clinic. What's your test scores? What's your blood pressure? What's your cholesterol levels? What's your BMI? What's your TSH? The chemistry of numbers, that's clinical chemistry. Biochemistry is the chemistry of biology. We're not numbers, we're biology. We're biological systems. And so all of the stuff we're talking about that's biochemistry is over the head of clinical chemistry. Clinical chemistry laughs at this stuff, doesn't even care about this stuff. They just want to know what your cholesterol levels are or what your blood sugar levels are. We're talking about here is biochemistry. And that's how you manipulate the body for reals, not symptomatically, not changing test scores, not changing numbers, but for reals. That is really changing the biology and the chemistry, the biochemistry of the system. And that's where health is. That's what we talk about on this. That's what you and I talk about whenever we do these programs. It's biochemistry. You're getting a hardcore biochemistry here. And I venture to say, AJ, you're a pretty good biochemist after talking. You probably know more about biochemistry than I'd say 99% of people, just from listening to me and Doc and being on these calls.
Thank you. And it does make sense. It does make practical sense. Certainly, I'm not, but I do understand what you mean. But my first question is, GABA, is that anything to do? Did they take that GABA term and put the penton on it? Is that
you asking me, or somebody asked that?
I'm asking.
Yes. GABA is sometimes nutrients are so effective that drug companies can't deny it, but they can't sell you the nutrient because they can't make any money on it. So they tweak it a little bit so they can get a patent out of it. Gabapentin is a super souped up version of GABA. Yes. Lyrica. And they give it for everything. They give it for anxiety. They give it for depression. They give it for sleep. They give it for pain. Why? Because it relaxes the brain. GABA is a relaxing brain chemical. And a lot of our problems are from our brain chemistry being hyped up. Depression, believe it or not, is from your brain chemistry being hyped up. Anxiety, from your brain chemistry being hyped up. Insomnia, your brain chemistry being hyped up. Psychosis, neurosis, schizophrenia, your brain chemistry being hyped up. Calming the brain can help with a lot of neurological and mental health and emotional health issues. So anything you do to calm the brain down is going to be very important. Oxygen can help calm the brain down. That's what we talk about, slow, deep breathing. Nutritional supplementation can calm the brain down. Things like thiamine, omega-3 fatty acids, have a vitamin E, have a brain calming effect. Addressing blood sugar issues with nutrition or with dietary strategies, brain calming effect. And one of the most important brain calming chemicals is GABA, because it's a derivative of butyric acid. GABA, gamma-aminobutyric acid calms the body down. You know, there used to be a drug, there used to be this incredible molecule that we used to, and I've talked about this before, so forgive me, we used to use in the gym because it was important for bodybuilding. It helped you build muscle, right? And the same molecule that helped you build muscle was the most amazing real sleep medicine you'd ever, substance that you could ever take, sleep molecule you could ever take. You would take it and you would fall asleep in minutes, and you'd sleep for an hour or 2 or 3, and you'd wake up completely refreshed. So this amazing bodybuilding molecule, and it was a sleep molecule, help relax everything. And bonus, it was the absolute best aphrodisiac you would ever take.
Really?
I mean, you would take this stuff and you would be, you know, I don't want to get too graphic.
Raring to go?
You were raring to go, right? So this molecule helps you fall asleep like nobody's business, knock you right out. And it was the best aphrodisiac, made you horny as hell, you know, and it built muscle. What a perfect molecule from God, right? It was called gamma hydroxybutyrate. It was like GABA. GABA is gamma amino butyrate. This was gamma hydroxybutyrate. So it's very similar. Of course, people realized that it would make people fall asleep and make them really horny. So they started using it as a date rape drug, and they made it illegal because of that. They called GHB. You may have heard of it, GHB. It was in the news back in the early 2000s. So this was such an amazing thing. But my point is, it was a derivative of butyrate. There was another drug, another supplement that I used to use as a bodybuilder when I was lifting weights and doing my stuff back in the 1980s and 1990s. It was called HMB, hydroxymethylbutyrate. Again, butyrate. So we see butyrates every time you want. When you look at bodybuilding, you look at relaxation, and you look at sexuality, and you look at sleep, you'll see butyrate. Well, it turns out butyrate, as I said earlier, is important for satiety. It makes you feel satisfied. And guess what? One of the best ways to build your own butyrate, the ketogenic diet. The ketogenic diet upregulates butyrate. Want more? Butyrate is made by bacteria, and that butyrate in the gut microbiome, and those bacteria, that butyrate communicates to your intestinal cells to help your intestinal cells function more effectively. And it turns out that colon cancer is related to low levels of butyrate. So butyrate, on top of everything else for the brain, is also anti-colon cancer, protects intestinal cells. Butyrate, by the way, comes from, the word butter comes from butyrate, because butter is one of nature's richest sources of butyrate. So all of this is to say that there is incredible chemistry that's going on in the gut that not only affects the brain, but affects every system of the body, but particularly the nervous system, and the brain. And butyrate is an example of that.
All right, Pharmacist Ben, you brought
and that's GABA, by the way, to answer your question.
That's fantastic.
Gabapentin is a derivative. If you're on gabapentin, go get yourself some sleep gummies and try your sleep gummies. You may get the same benefit, or just go get some GABA. And do the ketogenic diet.
Well, I want you to put together a show, not today, but I want you to put together a show, and we got to figure out how to help people wean off of each of these medications that they're on. You gotta give us
that would be a great show. You know, your number one health challenge, if you're on a drug and the doctor says you're going to be on this the rest of your life, you know, or you are on it, you're just taking it long term. Your number one health goal should be to wean yourself off that drug. There's no drug that you want to be on for a long period of time. There are some exceptions. One that comes to mind is if you have a kidney transplant, then you're going to have to be on an immune suppressant for the rest of your life. But, you know, that's a little bit different. That's, you know, you've manipulated the body in such a dramatic way by putting a new kidney in or putting a new organ in. Not that, you know, you probably had to do it. It was, your life was at stake, But at that point, you do need to be on immune suppressants the rest of your life. But for the most part, if you're on a statin drug, a beta blocker drug, an antihypertensive, a blood sugar, anti-glycemic or blood sugar drug, whatever it is, number one goal, wean yourself off that med. Tell your doctor what you're doing. Always tell your doctor what you're doing. You don't have to listen to your doctor, but you want to inform him. You want to let him know that this is my plan. I'm gonna be doing this, whether you like it or not. I'm doing this, but this is, you let him know, because he's trying to help you, even in his own way, even if it's misguided, and that's his model. You have a de facto agreement with him, de facto contract with him, and it's only fair to work with your physician on that. Not that you have to listen to what he says, but you want to inform him of what you're doing.
Okay, but if you are on an immunosuppressant, how do you stay healthy?
It's very difficult. But think about it. You just had a new kidney put in. What are you going to do? There's no other option. You have a foreign organ in your body. Your body's going to attack that organ. That's what the immune system does. So you have to suppress it. So there's if you're on an immune suppressant, you are going to run higher risks of immune problems. And it's true. That's what happens when you have a transplant. But it's a life or death situation. So what do? Nutrition.
Take vitamin C,
lots of vitamin C, zinc, vitamin E, the mighty 90 essential nutrients. It becomes extra important.
Yeah, but then that's going to boost your immune system.
It's not going to boost your immune system to the point where it's going to counteract the poison. The poison is going to overwhelm everything. That's another thing, by the way. I'm glad you brought that up. We have this idea as lay people, and doctors have this idea, that there's an equivalency between drugs and nutrition. There's not. That's not how nutrition works. Nutrition helps your body do what it's supposed to do. It assists your body in its own natural chemistry. It assists. It doesn't make things happen like a drug. A drug makes things happen. It overwhelms the chemistry. Like, I don't want to tell the story again because I told it a million times, but it's like it hits the rock, right? It says, I'm smarter than you. Boom, you're going to do this. Nutrition it lays the groundwork. It tills the soil. It doesn't make this plant grow. It just sets up the soil so the plant can grow. If your blood's not supposed to clot, taking vitamin K is not going to clot your blood. If your immune system is not supposed to be activated, taking vitamin C is not going to activate your immune system. If you're what other examples are there of drugs that they tell you not to take? The first one,
potassium. They say stay away from potassium because
if you're on what? If you're on a beta blocker or something. If you're on a heart drug and you take potassium is not going to make your heart do something it's not supposed to do. Your body that has raw materials, has resources, says, oh, I need to clot. Well, I got some vitamin K here, so I can use it in my clotting chemistry. It's not like you take vitamin K and all of a sudden your blood starts to clot. That's idiotic. That's not how it works. So there's no time when you don't want a nutritional supplement, and there's no time when you don't want to eat your broccoli, because that's another thing they tell you when you're on a blood thinner. Don't eat broccoli. Don't eat green leafy vegetables. If you're a doc out there and you're saying that to people, I know there's probably no docs out there, come on this program. Let's talk about it. Okay. And so we can hash this thing out, because you're giving people bad information. That's not the case. There's no time when you don't want your mighty 90 essential nutrients. None. Never. There's no time when you should say, oh, I'm on this beta blocker, so I don't want my mighty 90. I don't want my vitamin C. I don't want my B complex. Never. That should never cross your lips, and no healthcare professional should ever say that. Same with green leafy vegetables and broccoli and such.
I've got a client, no gallbladder, on blood thinners and the ACE inhibitor, and was feeling dizzy and weak, and got flu-like symptoms, and went to the hospital, and the doctor said, okay, only take the ACE inhibitor and the blood thinner and stop your nutrition. And meanwhile, the person had gotten so much better that the drugs side effects, which were all of those things I just named,
that's their world. That's their world. Agent, that's the world. And here's another thing. We voluntarily interact with their world. We voluntarily enter into that world. When we go to the doctor, you're going to get doctored. You go to the doctor, you're going to get doctored. That's what a doctor does. He doctors you. So you can't go to the doctor and then say how stupid that is, because we volunteered. to go there. So that's what he says. No matter how good a carpenter is, if you ask the carpenter to fix your engine, he's going to take a hammer and nail and try to fix your engine. And what's going to happen to your engine with a hammer and a nail? He's going to say, well, what are you doing with a hammer and nail? You ruined my transmission. He says, hey, I'm a carpenter. That's what I do. I got a hammer and nail. So that's what doctors do. They do surgeries. They take things out. They drug you. They tell you not to use your nutrients. That's what they do. We're going there. So don't blame the doctor.
Ben, I got a sad email from a woman. You mentioned the C word.
Which C word? Did I mention the C word?
The big bad C word. After 5 sessions of radiation for liver cancer, I'm not ready to die. I was told on October 10th, I have only months to live, and this is in my bones. My wife and I have been doing our herbal teas, turmeric and rosemary for pain. What can I add?
Okay, God bless him. God bless him.
Fighting for my survival. My hip is fractured.
Okay. All right. That's a tough, obviously it's a tough one. Cancer is duress. It's a sign of cellular duress. I know. Do you want to go over the mechanism of cancer or?
Sure.
Okay. All right. So anytime you hear somebody say, oh, we don't know what causes cancer, or smoking causes cancer, or this causes cancer, that's not what cancer is about. Nothing really causes cancer directly, except for perhaps ionizing radiation that can change the DNA. But for the most part, cancer is not a direct thing based on I ate this food or I had this behavior. Cancer is first of all, cancer is a cellular phenomenon. So when we say breast cancer, liver cancer, bone cancer, we're missing the real crux of the matter, which is bone cell cancer, liver cell cancer, breast cell cancer, skin cell cancer. And this is not just verbiage, it's not semantics. It's really important because we want to appreciate that the problem is not at the level of the organ or the tissue, it's a level of the cell. So what is going on? Now we can zoom in and see what's happening. If you say, oh, it's the prostate, I got prostate cancer, that doesn't mean anything because the prostate is a gland made up of a bunch of cells. You can't really approach the gland, you got to approach the cells. By approaching the gland when you call it prostate cancer, that gives the doctor and our patients permission to kill the cells. We're actually killing the cells, and all they're trying to do is survive. That's what cancer is. Cancer is cells that need to survive, and they have come up with a strategy for survival. So here's what happens. Quick digression. You got 2 kinds of cells. You've got old cells or proto-cells, prototype cells, primitive cells, called prokaryotes. Karyote means cell. K-A-R-Y-O-T. Karyote means cell. So you got primitive cells, proto-cells, prokaryotes. They came on the scene on Earth about 3.5 billion years ago, although they're changing some of the dates recently, but standard dogma, 3.5 billion years ago, the first cells appeared. These cells were very primitive. They didn't have a lot of structure inside. They couldn't do a lot of behaviors. Basically, they could just divide. They were primitive. And then about 800 million years later, an amazing thing happened. All of a sudden, these new cells appeared on the scene. And these new cells, the thinking goes, were a merger of 2 types of protocells, 2 types of prokaryotes. There was one prokaryote that was most of the prokaryotes, and these were primitive cells that could not utilize oxygen. And because they couldn't utilize oxygen, they couldn't get a lot of energy. This is why they were primitive. Oxygen gives you a lot of energy. These proto cells couldn't use oxygen, so they could only really basically work with sugar, and they couldn't do a lot of stuff. But then, about 2.7 billion years ago, a merger occurred between these protocells and another type of cell that could use oxygen. And this merger occurred, the symbiotic merger occurred, creating a brand new type of cell that was like the old cells, except now could use oxygen. Do you follow me? Mm. We call these new cells eukaryotes. EU means good, advanced. So you have prokaryotes, couldn't use oxygen. They're primitive. They couldn't do a lot of stuff. They were just there. Their internal workings were kind of a mishmash. They weren't really organized very well. And then later, 800 million years ago, a merger occurred between a special type of cell, and it's going to be really cool when I tell you what this special type of cell was, that could use oxygen, and the prokaryote. and it created these eukaryotes. Are you with me? Making sense?
Yes.
So now you had a cell that could use oxygen. And because it could use oxygen, it could do a lot more things. It was much more advanced. It was much more structured. It could not only, the old cells could just divide. They just divide rapidly. That's all they could do. They could form these films. The new cells, they could start to structure organs. This is where organisms start to develop, because now you have these advanced cells that could make a liver, or they could become a skin, or they could become a bone. They were very advanced, and it was all because of this merger. So what was this merger? This merger was a merger between the old cells, the prokaryotes, the primitive cells, and a new type, and a type of bacteria that integrated with the cell that we now call mitochondria. The mitochondria used to be individual cells. And in fact, today, the mitochondria have their own DNA. They call it mitochondrial DNA. You may have heard of this on CSI. Because now they'll look for mitochondrial DNA to assess your genetics, because mitochondrial DNA come from the mother. So now you have a special type of cell that can use oxygen and can do things. It's very functional. In fact, it could live on its own. Prokaryotes can't live on their own. They got to form films. The eukaryote, that's like an organism. They actually have organisms that are just eukaryotes. They call them single cell organisms. So these eukaryotes are incredibly advanced, but they require a lot of work. They require a lot of nutrition. It's not work. They require a lot of raw materials. They require oxygen. They require fats. They require nutrients, vitamins. They're very advanced. They're like a Lamborghini. The other ones were like an old jalopy, like a Model T. This is a Lamborghini. However, once in a while, and unfortunately increasingly in our modern lifestyle, we're putting a burden on these prokaryotes, on these eukaryotes, these advanced cells. We're putting a burden on them. The most important burden to a eukaryote, and the most important burden or stressor to human beings or animals, is lack of oxygen. Oxygen is the most important thing that we have to put into our bodies. More important than food, more important than Mighty 90, more important than water. The most important substance we have to put in our bodies is oxygen. You can't go 3 minutes without oxygen. Oxygen deprivation before it kills you will cause tremendous distress. Not only at the organismic level, at the level of us, but at the cellular level. And when a cell is robbed of oxygen long enough, guess what happens? It goes back to becoming a prokaryote. It goes from being a eukaryote, advanced cell, can make a liver, can do all these wonderful functions, it's very structured inside, it's DNA, Lamborghini, and it reverts back in time to where it can just survive. It goes back to being a prokaryote. So what does that got to do with cancer? A cancer cell is like a prokaryote. It has gone backwards in time. It has now become like a bacteria. What does a bacteria do? It divides.
Okay, got it.
So, did you say something?
No. Keep going.
So a cancer cell is like a eukaryote, an advanced Lamborghini that has gone back in time and become a prokaryote. Why? Because it's been robbed of oxygen, because it's toxic, because it can't do its business. And so instead of now becoming a liver, it just divides. Instead of becoming a skin, it just divides. It's almost like it says, you haven't been feeding me. You've been suffocating me. You've been making me stew in my own poison. I'm not going to be a liver anymore. I'm just going to go and divide. I'm going to be out on my own. It's like it doesn't know what else to do. It's not bad. It's not like war on cancer. It's just trying to survive. And so we have this notion that, we got cancer and we got to kill the cancer. And no, cancer is a sign that you need to be more loving and more kind and give the body more of what it needs. Now, the problem is that once the cells have been burdened, and lack of oxygen, I say, is the biggest burden. A guy named Dr. Otto Warburg proved this in the 1930s, that if you take a cell and you rob it of oxygen, it becomes cancerous. Instead of trying to poison the cell, instead of trying to kill the cell, which is what chemotherapy does, or surgeries do, or radiations do, we radiate the cell, we poison the cell, we kill the cell. We want to start to love the cell. We want to help the cell. Now, it turns out that once you have cancer, a switch has been turned on. So it's a little bit trickier with cancer than it is with an ordinary chronic degenerative disease, which is not like a quantum leap, but more like a vector, more like a direction. With a direction, you can kind of turn around, but with a cancer cell, there's a quantum leap. A switch has been turned on. So it's a little bit trickier with cancer. Nonetheless, the strategy is the same. You want to be as kind and as loving and as nurturing and as delicate to the body as you can be. You want to flood it with nutrition. You want to flood it with oxygen. You want to have zero tolerance for toxicity and for sugar and for cigarette smoke and drugs and for alcohol and all the ways we abuse our body. Cancer is a sign that you have to be kind and loving to your body to the max as you can. And everybody knows, doctors know, oncologists know, that chemotherapy doesn't work very well, first of all. And secondly, cancers come back. Why do cancers come back? Because even if you took care of the cancer with your surgery or your chemo, you haven't changed the environment that caused the cancer in the first place. So of course it comes back. Doctors will say there's no cure for cancer. There's just a 5-year survival rate because it doesn't get cured. You get a survival rate. And so while some people will survive longer, that's true, for the most part, you can expect 5 years later to have cancer. So you got to change the environment of the body that caused the cancer, that caused the cell to become cancerous. And you do that with by addressing the triangle, by being kind and loving to the body with food, with nutritional supplementation, keeping toxicity out, and making sure that you're flooding the body with oxygen, even if it means going to a hyperbaric oxygen chamber, but certainly things like exercise and deep breathing techniques and meditation, anything you can do to improve oxygenation will all help. That's what cancer is. So for this person, to get back to this person, I don't know where they're at in their journey, and it could be that they're so far progressed that they can't do anything about it. But what they can do, and this is what all cancer patients should be doing, no matter how severe the cancer, every day you want to feel good. You want to feel good every day, feel better every day. Forget the cancer. People die with cancer and they didn't even know they had cancer. There's people who on autopsy, they'll find they had cancer. They didn't even know they had cancer. So forget the diagnosis. Your job's to feel good every day. The metric is not, the goal that is not eliminating the cancer. The metric is feeling good. Who cares if you have cancer if you feel great? Who cares if you feel lousy, but you got rid of your cancer? So cancer is just a word. It's just a diagnosis. Your job is to feel good. How do you feel good? Oxygen, nutrition, staying away from problem foods, reducing your calories, exercise, meditating, breathing, all the things we all have to do, right? It's the same thing. So when you have cancer, your job is to feel good every day. How do you do it? The same things that we talk about here all the time. Does that make sense?
Makes tremendous sense.
That's my talk on
cancer. Tell them they can't have you for another 12 minutes. So,
12 minutes.
And then Bruce on YouTube is asking, and I don't know if I want to ask this question. He's saying, my question is about the common cold. If I take the Mighty 90, do I need to take extra secret sauces to avoid getting the flu? And why might getting a jab for the flu not be the best idea?
There's a bunch of questions there. So first of all, say that first part again. Do I need to take extra secret sauce? Do I need to take extra supplements?
Common cold. If I take the Mighty 90, do I need to take extra supplements, secret sauces, to avoid getting the flu?
The Mighty 90 is the baseline, the minimum wage. Are you happy working for minimum wage, AJ? Would you want to work for minimum wage? No. Nobody wants to work for minimum wage. But you need minimum wage. You need a minimum. You don't want to, that's not all you want. That's what the Mighty 90 is, the minimum wage. You need the minimum wage. Okay. That doesn't mean that you don't want to max out on other things, and you do. If you have a cold, there's certain nutrients that I would be maxing out on. Zinc FX, CFX, NAC. There's a lot of things that you can take to maximize, and also staying away from toxicity. If you have another thing you want to do if you're dealing with a cold, first of all, you want to catch the cold early. You know how you feel a little, right before you get a cold, you'll feel a little slow, like kind of something weird. There's like stickiness and slow. You're like moving in molasses kind of thing. That's when you want to catch your cold. That's when you want to start treating the cold. The best thing you do is flood the body with water, beyond Tangy Tangerine water, ideally. That will flush things out. A gallon and a half a day with your Beyond Tangy Tangerine. Flood it, drench it out, or rinse it out, clean it out, get all that stuff out via hydration. That's the first thing you want to do. in addition to the mighty 90 essential nutrients, of course, in these extra supplements. The second thing is a lot of sleep, 12 hours, 14 hours even. If you get 14 hours of sleep, take your sleep gummies. The body recovers while it's sleeping. Body heals while it's asleep. You'll feel better when you wake up in the morning. 12, 14 hours. Even if you have to do 6 sleep gummies, I'm exaggerating. But even if you want to really do your sleep gummies or a Benadryl, whatever it is, you want sleep. Sleep's incredibly important when you're starting to feel sick. And third of all, movement, exercise. Jump up and down on a rebounder, run, get on an exercise bike. Moving is extremely important for moving the blood around, for upregulating immune cells, for all the things that support the immune system for fighting colds and other things. Even if you don't feel like doing it, get in the gym, get on the exercise bike for 10 minutes, or a sauna to sweat it out. That's another thing you can do. You'll sweat out those are the 3 steps. Sweating it out, you sweat out the toxicity. Movement improves blood supply, upregulates the immune system. Sleep is incredibly important, and then hydration. That's how I would get that. And the earlier you catch it, the less likely you'll be to have the cold. If you're in the middle of the cold and you do it, you'll shorten the duration. High doses of the CFX are also helpful.
Well, he's saying he wants to avoid getting the flu.
Then that's when you want to do it. Or if you want to avoid it entirely, then you can do all those strategies and you'll avoid it entirely. More hydration, more sleep, more nutrition, and then movement and exercise and oxygenation. Now, the flu shot is a scam. Let me tell you why. First of all, you can still get the flu with the flu shot. That's a myth. In fact, some people get the flu right after the flu shot because they give you the flu. Number 2, the flu varies every year. The influenza virus is different every year. Viruses mutate every year. That's why you had to have every 6 months, you had to have another shot, if you know what I'm talking about, because it's always mutating. Viruses adjust, viruses mutate. So the flu vaccine is made before they know what the flu is this year. So they base it on last year's flu. So when you take a flu vaccine in 2024, it's for the flu that was out in 2023.
Let's not say these words, but I know what you mean. Keep going.
Which word? Oh, yeah, I know. I should say that word. I'm sorry. I know. We make it cut off. I got to be careful. I got to really, good point. Because I got 2 strikes on me here. I don't want to. So, yeah. So the shot is based on last year's version, not this year's version. And nobody tells you that. What a scam. First of all, you can get sick even if you get the shot. Secondly, the one they're giving you, the version they're giving you is based on last year's. So take care of your immune system. I haven't had the flu and I don't even know how long. I don't even remember. I may have never had the flu. I don't remember when I had the flu. That whole thing that happened, a couple of years ago, I never got it. You don't have to be sick. The body can handles these things. We got to start loving and respecting and honoring the system. We have medicalized the system with this implicit message that it's messed up. Oh, you're just inevitably doomed. Your stupid body, your body's weak and flawed and stupid and it doesn't know what it's doing. We have to fix it. No, we don't need to be fixed. We need to be fed. We're not sick. We're starving. We're missing the raw materials, the basic building blocks that the body needs to do its business of fighting disease and of repairing metabolic imbalances. You don't need to be fixed. Take care of all the basics, and you can live a good, long, healthy life the way God intended. Traumas are different, and there are traumas that occur. But aside from traumas and infections, you can, our bodies can handle any metabolic distress. Our bodies can handle on its own if you do the right things.
Okay, I'm just going to make a comment about someone. Wisdom on YouTube mentions the use of a pharmaceutical that a lot of, I don't know. Can you see what they wrote there? But at any rate,
I never checked it.
They're talking about the use of a pharmaceutical. I don't want to talk about pharmaceuticals on this show because that's not what we do at Youngevity. We deal with nutrition. And although there might be some great therapeutic uses for different pharmaceuticals, that's not our bag. But wisdom, there's more than one way to skin a cat, I gather. So just wanted to let you know.
Yeah, I know there people want to know, like when that whole thing happened, that shall remain nameless. There were certain drugs that were out and they didn't want you to have the drugs and people wanted to take the drugs. And, I say, like you brought up, I say, go with nutrition, go with the basics. Even if this one drug that I know what you're talking about, it might not be as bad as everybody was saying, and it has beneficial uses. It's anti-parasitic, anti-cancer, antiviral, all those kinds of things. Don't get yourself in that position. If you are in that position and you want to have some kind of pharmaceutical cure, that's not a bad bet. But our position, like you say, is let's make the body strong. We live in a world of viruses and world of bacteria, in a world where it's a jungle and everything's trying to attack us. But God or evolution or nature equipped us with armor, metabolic armor, in the form of an immune system, which we can support, that can help handle all of these inevitable attacks. It's a jungle out there. Everybody wants to eat you. Everything's eating everything else, but we have an immune system that acts as like a force, like a shield.
Hang on a second. So now okay. So we have a more important question. Wisdom. We talk about niacin all the time, and niacin is not ivermectin. It's not the same thing. So I'm not entirely sure what you're getting at, but we're going to move on because we have an important question from For Life. My mom has a history of xerostomia.
Okay.
Doctors have suggested everything, but no improvement. No, I guess.
Okay.
No previous XX of chemo or radiation treatments. Just a
very dry mouth. Okay, dry mouth is a sign of a couple things. First of all, it could be an autoimmune issue, which can cause dryness. Secondly, be nutritional deficiencies that can cause dryness. Got some time. All right. So, in the interest of time, I would be looking for other. I would be looking for other things associated with dry mouth. Dry mouth could be an imbalance in the nervous system, particularly parasympathetic nervous system. It could also involve. Actually, I take that back. The parasympathetic nervous system versus the sympathetic nervous system. What happens when you're scared? You get cotton mouth. You get dry, right?
Okay.
Right. So it could be a sign of an overactive stress nervous system. That could be one thing that's causing it. Secondly, it could be nutritional deficiencies, particularly in fats and fatty vitamins. Vitamin A deficiency will cause incredible dryness. In fact, people who take Accutane are notoriously low in vitamin A. Accutane poisons the vitamin A system, and they'll get incredible dryness. Essential fatty acid deficiency will also cause dryness. Both of these are also involve dry eyes too, by the way. So dry eyes, dry mouth are kind of similar from a mechanistic standpoint. So fatty nutrients, EFAs and vitamin A in particular. And then thirdly is if you have dry mouth, it could be Sjogren's syndrome, which is an autoimmune disease. So what I want to do is I want to look at other health challenges. She says no previous history of chemo or radiation, but there's got to be some other health issues going on. And that's what I'd want to address. You can't really target dry mouth on its own. If she's been to doctors suggesting everything, guarantee there's something underneath. Doctors are working at the level of the fruit. You got to go to the root. And I would be going A for fat absorption. That is intestinal health, obviously, the first point on the triangle of disease. An overactive stress system. Or thirdly, if there is any issues with nutritional deficiencies in fatty nutrients like vitamin A and vitamin A and essential fatty acids specifically. And then there was one other thing that I was going to say, which is Sjogren's syndrome, if there's any autoimmune problems. But it doesn't sound like they would know. But I would look for other health challenges.
Okay, For Life, if you have...
And by the way, there's somebody said something about meds. And yes, anticholinergic meds, Benadryl, for example, those types of meds. Those anticholinergic meds are meds that suppress the cholinergic system, anticholinergic, which is the relaxation nervous system, roughly speaking. And that's usually a sign of an overactive stress response. So that could be there's some kind of overactive stress response. Although if they are on medications, yes, Wisdom points that out very accurately. Anticholinergic drugs can cause dryness. Marijuana can do it. That's why, I don't know if you probably never smoked pot, AJ, but back in the day,
ever.
Right. They have a thing called cotton mouth, and that is another anticholinergic effect, like Wisdom is saying, a drug effect or pharmaceutical effect from marijuana. And then I think that's it. That's what I would be doing.
Okay. For Life, please email us at questions@dailywithdoc.com so that one of the team members can help you out with that. Pharmacist Ben, I gotta let you go, but I have two very, 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 very important questions for you.
Mm-hmm.
Number one, did you see my Jets win yesterday?
I didn't know they won, and they were losing last time I saw. How did they possibly win?
The Jets got to win. And then the second question is, what do you think about the Yankees debacle to the Dodgers?
I think the Dodgers are a dynasty. Holy cow. Holy cow. That's freaking amazing. They're an amazing team. It's not the Yankees' fault. It's the freaking Dodgers. They're amazing. Yeah. Best team money can buy next to the Yankees.
Okay, well, there's your hard stop. Pharmacist Ben, I'm going to put on the disclaimer. It's been, the video. It's been fantastic having you here today.
Thank
and
you.
We'll see you tomorrow.
Thank you. Good to see you.
And you're the man.
All right. Take care, everybody. Bye.